Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski. A lot of controversy in this one. Seems like you're on one side of the fence or not. I mean, that's really all you can be if you're ever going to talk about the MMA. You have to be on one side or the other. You can't give any kind of leeway. If you can't be in the middle at all, you have to be on one side or the other. And the side I'm on, I don't think it was a robbery. First of all, we need to talk about robberies. A robbery, you can never call it a robbery if it's just a close fight.
Right.
If it's a close fight, then it's never a robbery one way or the other. If they gave that to Volk, I wouldn't call it a robbery. I wouldn't call it a robbery when they give it to Makhachev. I mean, it was a close fight. I do think Islam won. I think Islam won rounds 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think everyone can agree Volk won round 5. Now, if you look at the 1, 2, 3, and 4, I could see a way where you would give Volk, maybe rounds 2, maybe rounds 3, maybe round 4, because he landed the more shots. But I personally would still give Islam round 4, 3, 2, and 1. That's just the way I look at it. I rewatched it today, looking at it from who landed the more impactful shots on the feet. I think Islam did the more damage on the feet. And when he's on the ground, he's in the more dominant position. And I don't think, if Islam was taking a lot of damage when he has his back like that, he would probably move. Like if he was really hurting from those shots, he would move. When you're on the feet and someone punches you, you move because it hurts. If he has his back in a dominant position and he's taking a couple back shots like this, he would move if he was like, all right, this is enough. I can't be doing it. He keeps that position for a reason, whether it was because he was getting tired, it was round 4 and he needed to take a little break or something like that. I think he won rounds 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'll let you go, and I'll give my second part of that, but go ahead.
All right. First I want to start off by saying that I got a little bit nervous for Islam when he was walking to the cage. Dude, he was like not sweating, like he hadn't been warming up, or just, I don't know. He looked like super nervous, or he was feeling the pressure of that Australian crowd or something. Like he did not look confident at all. Like just looking at his eyes standing in the octagon, he kept drinking water when Alexander Volkanovski was being announced and just looked almost nervous. And when they came out and they started fighting, like he looked stiff at first. I don't know. It made me super nervous, but I think he loosened up as the fight went on. But yeah, no, I think Islam won the fight as well. I think it was a lot closer than I thought it would be. But at the end of the day, I mean, Volk is in his home country with the crowd 100% on his side. And not one judge gave the fight for Volk. I mean, one had it 49-46, and it was 48-47, 48-47. But, I mean, if it was a robbery, I mean, one of those judges would have surely given it to the hometown guy, right? I mean, from what I saw, it was Islam, on the feet, I guess it was fairly close on the feet. But Islam's the one whose punches looked better, in my opinion. He was snapping the head back of Alexander Volkanovski multiple times. There's even a moment in the first or second where he hit Volk with something on the side of the head, and Volk like dropped down to a knee. You could tell he was rattled. And every time that Islam would land on Volk would like shake his head like that was a good one. And you could tell when he was hitting him because Volk was shaking his head a lot. I thought Islam did really good body work with the kicks. But the one thing with Islam and Khabib and guys like that is that if they're not destroying their opponents and if they're not, absolutely dominating who they're fighting, people think they're, losing the fight because they're so used to seeing those guys dominate guys like Charles Oliveira and Khabib when he dominated Justin Gaethje and Poirier and, everybody, McGregor, everybody. And so you see Islam go in there in a close fight and you automatically think he's losing. He's not winning the fight.
Right.
There's so much bias in that fight last night. Everybody wanted Volk to win unless you're, an Islam and Khabib fan or if you're Russian. But I feel like everybody I saw online, everybody I heard giving their previews and breakdowns was pulling for Volkanovski. So I think the bias plays a big part too. And my last thing about it is, Volk wasn't really able to get his offense going because he's so worried about the takedown. I think that's the case for every single fighter that comes in there against a guy like Islam. So when Islam shoots for a takedown and Volk stuffs it, or Volk gets taken down and stands back up, the crowd goes crazy. Everybody at home goes crazy. And you think that's, deserving of points, or that's deserving of, winning a round in the judges' eyes. Like, everybody feels that way because they're so invested and they want Volk to win. But at the end of the day, I mean, just stuffing takedowns and climbing back up to your feet doesn't win fights. Islam was marching forward most of the fight. He had him up against the cage a lot. Whether he was getting the takedown or not, he was still controlling the fight without taking damage. So I mean, yeah, I don't think Volk did enough to win the fight. Yeah, the 5th round, Volk landed a great shot, got him on the ground, got on top, and was landing some good ground and pound. But I mean, the 2 minutes there at the end of the fight doesn't account for the rest of the 4 rounds. So yeah, I don't know. It's a biased sport that we're invested in here. So Islam won the fight, in my opinion. I don't see any other way around it. Not one single judge gave him the fight, and he's in his home country. I don't know. Yeah, that's my take on it. Islam won for sure, in my opinion, but definitely close. Hats off to Volk. He just showed that Volkanovski probably beats everybody else at 145 or at 155. He's the clear-cut number 2 pound-for-pound guy in the world. I don't see anybody beating Volk anytime soon. I mean, that dude's tough. He's good, super skilled everywhere. I mean, that's probably going to be Islam's closest fight, in my opinion, unless somebody can come in there and clip him.
Yeah, it's funny because I was still getting comments saying Volk is still the number 1 pound for pound fighter. I'm like, well, they literally just fought at the same weight and one guy won. So that probably means that he's a very solid number 2. And I will say I fucking love Alexander Volkanovski. The he's a savage.
Yeah.
And he didn't need to do that at all. He didn't need to go up in weight at all. He could have just stayed at featherweight and kept dominating people. But he wanted to challenge himself and go for 2 belts and fight a guy that nobody else wanted to fight. So
right,
totally respect him there. I still think he's the featherweight GOAT for sure, and could still be in the conversation for greatest of all time because a lot of people think he won. So if you think he won, then you got to put him up there. So yeah. I will say though, Islam showed that he's just so disciplined. Like, it would have been so easy for him to just get in a wild fight with Volk, with the way that Volk was trying to like egg him on into it, kind of like talking to him and shaking his head. And, when he was on the ground, like talking to him, like telling him he's not doing anything and everything like that. But he didn't. I mean, he still stuck to his plan and everything. And I went back and watched the Khabib Conor fight a couple of days before this, and Khabib, he wasn't necessarily that disciplined in that fight against Conor. Like, he stood with Conor a couple times and kept his hands down and took unnecessary shots on the feet, which is totally unlike him. Islam was as disciplined as they come and stuck to the game plan. Going back to what you were saying about him looking maybe nervous coming out and everything, I don't know exactly if this is true or not, but like, it might have been his first fight in a while where Khabib wasn't in his corner or something like that, and there's like a little, different feel to that. If, someone that you've basically been to war with, or like that's on your side for a long time, isn't there, definitely could have played a factor there. Kind of agreeing with you in the fact that, everybody thought that Islam was just going to go out there and smash Volk, or like that was kind of the narrative around it. I know we were part of building that narrative, but if you think, if you think a guy's going to go just get dominated and then he goes out there and it's actually a close fight, well, that's a win for the fighter for, making it a close fight, but it's not a win on the scorecards, like even if he lost. So going back to what you're saying, basically, like, he was having to defend a lot of the fight, and he had good defense, no doubt about that. I mean, he stuffed 5 takedowns. Islam landed 4. And when he's on the ground, he wasn't really taking a ton of damage or getting in spots where he could be finished, spots where he didn't want to be, and held in spots where he didn't want to be, but wasn't in necessarily too much danger. But yeah, just overall, it looked like it was a win for Volkanovski in the fact that he overcame the odds. The odds were stacked against him, and it looked like a win for the fans to be like, yeah, this guy can hang with Islam. And if they fight again, the odds would probably be a lot closer. But just not a win on the scorecards. I just don't see it. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe you watch it 10 times and you come out with a different scorecard every time. But from what I looked at, I think it's clear 3-5 or 3 out of 5 for Islam, and could definitely be a 4 out of 5 for Islam. So
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, I people aren't giving Islam enough credit for fighting a lot of the fight on the feet with Volk, trading shots with Volk. I think it all comes down to, or it kind of comes back to the whole point that Khabib wasn't there. If Khabib was in the corner, you'd probably be hearing a lot of, wrestle Islam, get in. Khabib's always yelling at Islam to wrestle. Get in close, go for the clinch. So yeah, maybe Islam didn't have that in his ear. Islam talked about wanting to knock Volk out. So I don't know. Things could have been different if Habib was in the corner. This is Islam. I mean, this is a big, big change for Islam. You look at his last fight; he was in Abu Dhabi. That's close to his home territory. He had a lot more fans in Abu Dhabi. Habib in his corner, and now you're going to go to enemy territory against Alexander Volkanovski, the pound for pound number one. The whole crowd against you. There's threats before the fight if somebody's going to bring a laser in and shine it in his eye during the fight, which is just
yeah,
absurd. But I mean, you got to deal with all that. You got to deal with people talking, chirping you the whole time you're there, and your right hand man, who you've done everything with since you were a young kid, is not going to be there for the first time. So yeah, Islam. I mean, I don't think he gets enough credit for what he had to overcome. Also, I want to point out that the weight cut was different this time because normally you're going to get 24 hours to recover and recoup, and he got like 10 to 11 hours this time. I think that could have played a part in some of the fight. I mean, he just didn't look as active at times, but I mean, like I said, man, that the weight cut was a nasty one. It always is for him, and you get the time to recoup cut in half for this one when you got to take on the pound for pound number one. So maybe Alexander Volkanovski had his A game on Saturday night, fought tremendously, and Islam just fought average, and Islam was still able to get that win. I mean, I don't think people are giving him enough respect for that.
yeah,
Yeah, either way, man, I'd watch those two fight every single night.
yeah. I mean, folks never lost in the UFC.
Yeah.
He's not an easy opponent by any means.
I mean, both guys deserve a ton of respect. I mean, Volk basically, we heard all week, daring to be great. I mean, you're not just moving up to 155 to fight a 155, or you're fighting the most feared guy at that division, pound for pound number 2 right behind you. There's a lot on the line besides just, becoming champ. So yeah, hats off for him too. I mean, that was a hell of an effort. Damn near got it done. If there was another round, things could be different. But yeah, I mean, I just don't see any way around giving Islam the win there. Such a good fight, though.
Yeah, and another thing people have been saying is if there was a 6th round, Volk would have finished him.
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, there's 5 rounds for a reason, bro.
Yeah.
And just because he would have finished him in the next round doesn't mean he wins the fight. I mean, if
Yeah.
if those were the rules, then we would have found out. But those are not the rules. Sorry, bro.